What we're going to be talking about today is sugars. Regular sugar is not the devil. It's not a religion, not a political belief. It's a food. Now, this is a really big topic. A lot of people act like this is some kind of religion. Like whether you eat sugar or you don't, it might as well, divide the people that live on like the east side and the west side of LA. It's just not that big of a deal. There's a few things for you guys to know, and then from there you can make decisions that make sense for you, what you like to cook, what your taste is, because personally I have a very sweet tooth, but I also have a little bit of knowledge that tells me, look, you shouldn't be eating like the refined sugars, the brownies, the cookies, the cakes all day. Hopefully from this you can gain some kind of information to feel empowered to make the right choices, because that's really what all of this is about. You doing what's best for you. There's so much information out there. It can be really confusing about why to choose what. So let me give you the breakdown. First thing I want to do is talk about regular old sugar, okay? This is regular sugar, granulated white sugar. So sugar is not bad for you because it's like high calorie. For me, sugar is something that I don't like to have too much of because it's highly processed, all right? You can see sugar are like teeny tiny crystals. The way that they became even that shape was because they were made in a lab. Sugar is something that is created. It doesn't just show up for you ready to be measured and made into your brownies. It doesn't like grow in the ground that way. And that's how you know that it's maybe been treated for all different kinds of things. And that treatment is something that your body senses, and your body says like, oh, this isn't natural. I don't necessarily know what to do with it. And that's where you get those reactions like spiked blood sugar, inflammation, so on and so forth. Naturally occurring sugars and then processed sugars act different. You can still have the sweetness of sugar. You can still have the caramelization that sugar provides with a less processed food. And how do you do that? I turn to coconut sugar. Coconut sugar is a naturally occurring sugar that is less processed. The way that you're going to get it is going to be closer to how it was in nature. And so then your body takes that information and just knows how to deal with it a lot easier. The other reason that I like coconut sugar instead of granulated sugar is because this actually has the addition of like some trace minerals and some fiber, and because it comes from coconut, it has like a caramely extra flavor note in there. So for me, it's not about like, what can I demonize and take out of my diet? It's like, okay, if I'm gonna eat sugar, how can I make sure that it has some benefits? And for me, that comes from coconut sugar. I also wanna just make sure to cover all my bases here. This is Splenda. We all know what this is. And this is a low calorie sweetener. Now, this is here for that reason. This is for people that are focused on sugar because of the caloric value. And what your body does with low calorie sweeteners is it actually says like, oh, this is also a chemical, perhaps more chemically derived than regular sugar. So if I had to choose between like a low calorie chemically created sweetener and a granulated sugar, I would just use granulated sugar. It's kind of just all about like weighing that perfect balance of what you're actually trying to achieve. And if you're here and if you're a fiber person, you're probably in it for the long haul. You're probably trying to be healthy for the right reasons. I tend to think that like calorie counting falls in the category of not super helpful, not really gonna help you achieve your goals as far as like holistic health. So this is monk fruit. I just keep it in like a regular deli cup, and it looks and acts and bakes and tastes very similar to sugar. And that's why it's great to use, because this is literally like a one-to-one swap, but monk fruit is a naturally occurring lower glycemic sweetener. It's got some of the benefits of this, but it's not as processed. And that just means it's gonna be easier on your system. It won't cause as many of those gut reactions, and also it won't spike your blood sugar in the same way. My favorite brand of monk fruit is called Lakanto, and Lakanto has a lot of different products that they do. This is their maple syrup, and this is a maple syrup alternative. It's like a flavored syrup. It's not actually maple syrup. My favorite thing is to mix all of these things to achieve the effect that like granulated sugar might have without upsetting my system. Now that we talked about dry sweeteners, another thing to cover in this conversation is wet versus dry sugars. So in the dry sugar category, you have some things that are unrefined, you have some things that are refined, you have some things that are low glycemic and good for you, and then you have wet sweeteners. Now, a lot of people are confused about, can you use a liquid sweetener in place of a powder sweetener? And the answer is yes, and it depends on the recipe. If the base of the dessert is something that's a liquid, like an ice cream, a mousse, a pudding, a shake, whatever, you can always use a liquid sweetener in place of a powder sweetener. If it's something that is going to be baked and it calls for a powder sweetener, it's going to disturb the ratio of the recipe to add liquid into something that's meant to be dry. Honey has a really floral note, it's thick and rich, it naturally just has that honey flavor. So thinking about like what that's gonna do, what kind of complement that's going to give to your recipe, and that's how you know when to use it. It has nothing to do with is it better or worse. And then I wanna talk about date syrup. I love date syrup. Date syrup is like a really classically Mediterranean ingredient. It's used in sweet and savory recipes. Dates also, if you think about it, they're called nature's candy. They have also a caramely flavor. So this is gonna add that. I think it's about thinking about these ingredients and making some distinctive choices to say like, I'm gonna set myself up with something sweet this week, and how am I gonna do that in a way that's gonna feel good? When something isn't this thing that's like off limits, it doesn't make me wanna go psycho. So I'm hoping all of these have given you some ideas about how to go about your shopping, how to go about your baking, your cooking, and just work with these new ingredients in a way that feels playful, because it really is all about like experimenting. Thank you so much for joining me for this installment of Why This, Not That. Okay, so the card was full and I recorded the whole video, so let's try this again. Oh, a little disorganized because I might have been here once before.